Hi, it's Dave. Today I'm joined with Gali Russell from Hyperchange, and I've had him on my show a few times. I just want to welcome him back. Thanks.
What's up, Dave?
Hey, how's it going? Where are you right now?
I'm in Seattle in the new Hyperchange HQ with
Nice.
no furniture.
Congrats, man. Is it raining up there?
No, it's actually a beautiful sunny day. Yeah,
Awesome, man.
it's really nice out.
Great, man. Hey, so we wanted to do an episode on Bitcoin and talk about the pros and cons of Tesla, maybe putting some of their cash reserves into Bitcoin. But we're going to push that off for a part two, and I'm going to release that after this video. But a more important and pressing topic came up, and this is Tesla joining perhaps a Elon Musk holding company. And so I kind of want to unpack this and discuss this with you. And we're going to try to look at it from all these different angles, just trying to, ponder what are the implications, what are the likelihoods, what are the pros and cons. And I think, yeah, it'll be a fun discussion. So anyways, yeah, what's your reaction? I mean, for people who don't have context, Elon Musk has brought up this idea of a holding company in the past briefly, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. It hasn't resurfaced in recent years. But yesterday, I just had this moment where I'm just like, holding company, this is it. This is the idea. And I didn't fully explain why I had the idea, but the concept is right now, Tesla is becoming a cash cow, right? And they've got extra cash. They're able to raise incredible amounts of money with small dilution, right? So you could put 1%, raise a 1%, offering, you get $6 billion, right? It's like nothing in the bigger picture. And so if you combine SpaceX right now, one of their biggest needs is funding. Like they're always constantly raising money. They're losing money, they're investing in the future. Even Starlink right now is going to be a cash cow down the road, but it still needs a lot of funding. And so one of the ideas is, A, if we combine the companies under a holding company, Tesla can raise cash with super low dilution. SpaceX, right, can use a ton of cash very effectively. I mean, it's going to be way better than investing in anything else, I think, with Tesla's cash. And you could simplify boring company Neuralink too by sticking it in the holding company. And now Elon just needs one company structure. He doesn't need all these separate companies, right? He doesn't need to, interact with four CFOs, of all these different finance. He just talks to one person, right? And this would make Elon's life easier, but not just that, he might be able to start more companies underneath this umbrella, companies that otherwise he wouldn't probably want to start because of the complexity. So that's kind of the background. So Gali, what's your kind of thoughts and how do you see this?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating idea. And Elon is kind of different than a lot of entrepreneurs and company structures in that he like has a mission-based company. Like all of his companies are really set out for like long-term problems to solve. And therefore, it really takes real thinking about the governance and setup for how we can structure his companies to ensure that that goal is achieved. Like he doesn't want to IPO SpaceX because then you have short-term incentives. We're not going to get to Mars. And so this is a really fascinating, I think, one of the biggest problems in the Elon Musk averse. And then you have like a conflict of interest if Tesla ties up with SpaceX. But like you said, Tesla's cost of capital is negligible. SpaceX is diluting at 1/8 the valuation. Like, shouldn't Tesla just dilute and give that money to SpaceX? Like, I think that's kind of a no-brainer. So I love this idea. I think it's got huge potential.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about this whole thing is, I mean, with Elon going forward, it's kind of like, Tesla has reached this kind of point of mass acceptance, right? Now S&P 500 is forced to accept it. All these institutions have accepted Tesla. Um, and you think that like going forward, there's these question marks of, okay, so what does Elon focus on? Does he focus on Tesla? Does he focus on SpaceX, right? Or does he, and also there's Neuralink and Boring Company. And then he's got these other ideas like a vertical takeoff and landing jet. He could have some biotech ideas, or I was thinking he might even have some education ideas if he, really wanted to. But it's like, I think part of the thing is he's so strapped for time. I think as he enters kind of this next decade, that's the biggest limiting factor in a sense, is Elon is just like, he has all these reporting people that are just reporting these huge divisions. Like they're managing 5 or 10,000 people each. They're saying, hey, here's what's going on. We need your input. And this is happening across 4 different companies right now. It's like crazy. And I think if we are able to pull it all together, then you have some awesome operators. So you have a chief kind of operating officer for the whole thing that basically runs it the whole show. Is taking care of all of the companies, etc. All of the profit and losses, like they all pull together in the holding company. So not one company is like, they don't have too much pressure for the quarterly results. And the more that Tesla is able to be cash flow positive, but also profitable, it just shields and protects all of the other ventures, right? They don't have to have that pressure to be profitable. And so it's kind of like leveraging the success of Tesla and the growing profitability of Tesla in the next 5 or 10 years to invest and build into these next generation companies for Elon, right? And the potential is like in 10 years, can you imagine like what a holding company like of Elon's companies would be worth? It would be like crazy.
The idea of the combination is insane. And I think it's fascinating that Elon is still using the venture-based approach to fund all his companies, like Neuralink, a Boring Company. There's still traditional VCs that are getting access to them, although he's handpicking them. But I think it's so interesting that like he's diluting such early stages of such big ideas to sort of like the same legacy institutional VC investors. That's always been scratching my head. And like this other issue of like how many of our subscribers are begging to get into SpaceX? Like I got into SpaceX and I probably have 10 emails a day trying to get people into SpaceX or whatever. They are desperate, and there's no good way to do it. It's so complicated. It's such a mess. And so I feel like SpaceX has kind of been raising a ton of capital at a much lower price than it should have because it hasn't opened up to all of the demand that wants its shares. And so I don't know. I feel like this is a big kind of crux of I've seen Elon Boring Company, Neuralink, constantly dilute at a cheaper price than they should. And so that to me is the big problem this could solve is you combine it, the cost of capital of this combined entity is way cheaper than anything they could do on themselves. And then Elon can start funding projects. And I love what you're saying about the different HR structures and CFOs, because it's like, yeah, it's so redundant. It's so ridiculous. And the fact that like SpaceX and Tesla can't even work together super easily. And like, I don't know, that already feels like unnecessary friction on the Elon empire. So I think it's kind of weird because we've never had someone like Elon Musk who's run like 4 companies that are this big and important at once.
Yeah.
So that's why it kind of takes some outside the box thinking of like, how do we even go about this? Like, it's going to be like this. I've never heard of a holding company like this. Like, how would you even do it? Because SpaceX and Tesla already have all these shareholders. Like, is there going to be a buyout? Like,
yeah. So I want to dive into this with you. And I break it down into 3 main issues that need to be solved and stuff. And actually before that, have you thought about Neuralink, how much Neuralink can be worth in the future?
Dude, Neuralink is going to put the smartphone out of business. They're going to be bigger than Apple.
Exactly.
Like Tesla and Apple are comparing cars, and then Neuralink's going to. So I'm always like, bro, like everyone's like, Tesla, are they going to launch a phone? I love that concept, but it's like Elon hates phones because he knows Neuralink are next. So I think that's a fascinating component. Like to me, Neuralink is like trillions of dollars potential.
Yeah, I mean that's the. I mean, it's potentially, that's the thing. It's the scale and ambition of Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink are insane, right? And I think very few people are catching how ambitious Neuralink is. To me, the potential is this is the platform that disrupts the smartphone. It disrupts iOS completely. And usually, like with technology, you think you have to go head to head, like on the phone, make a better phone. But usually what you do is there's a new technology, something that comes out that makes it kind of the old technology irrelevant. Like you just don't want to use it as much, right? And I think with Neuralink, you've got this thing of Neuralink can make the actual device and then the platform to control the whole experience. Then you develop basically a SDK, right? A whole environment inside that programming environment. So now you have apps and sites and interfaces to engage with people through the Neuralink device. And so in a sense, it's a new World Wide Web, but it's actually maybe the next generation. It could be bigger than actually what we see today of the internet. And I don't think people have yet to completely understand and grasp it because it's such early stages of what Elon's trying to do here. It's such a big moonshot in a sense that people don't even think it's going to be possible. But if it is possible, whether it happens in 10 years or 20 years, who knows? But for Elon, it seems very clear that he sees that it is possible, right? And that he's going to invest in it and make it happen the best of his ability. But if he does, can you imagine that? You have Tesla disrupting transportation, energy, right? Autonomous robots, et cetera. You have SpaceX disrupting, space, transportation, Mars, civilization, Starlink disrupting internet, right? And then you have Neuralink disrupting our whole interface of how we engage with the world and the internet. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how you could fit three bigger companies in one holding company. It's like insane.
Right, they're like the three largest companies in the world. And this is what I love of like thinking investing as sort of an anthropologist. Like that's the lens that I look at it from. It's like, okay, we're already cyborgs with our phone. It's just the computer chip in our brain, but we just have to hold on to it and like look at it. It's that data straw that Elon Musk talks about. And so to me, that's where it's like, yeah, the electronics are getting, we've seen this plateau of the smartphone. My Apple phone gets bigger every year. It's like, what's happening? And then Neuralink is just miniaturizing all of those electronics and making them, some sort of bio compatibility to allow them to implant you. But it's really just when you think about how the arc of technology goes and us becoming cyborgs, it's totally the natural selection. And like that's why I'm really fascinated with Snap spectacles. And I thought that is like an intermediate step between, Apple's working on smart glasses too, getting the chip from our hand right here, then in our brain is kind of the progression. But to me, it seems totally clear when you think about the arc of technology that personal computing is here to stay. This is how humans become cyborgs. It's like how we almost evolve into something new where we literally have a computer chip that's a part of us. And you can see it's already happening. It looks so barbaric that we had to hold our chip outside of our body for decades. So, yeah, and I love what you're saying about like a totally new technology that's a new platform coming over the smartphone to disrupt it, because that's exactly what I think happening, even though it's probably 10 years ahead, like,
Yeah.
10 years away.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I personally have some reservations about the whole cyborg idea. I feel like, I feel like, in a way, technology can pull out and kind of disrupt some of the very redeemable qualities of being human. There's something about humanities that I think technology tends to dismiss, and I think the the bigger kind of picture I look at it is like I think it, and this remains to be seen. I don't know if it's even possible, but I hope that technology is used in a way, even with Neuralink, whatever, where we become more human in a sense, where we redeem the qualities of empathy, of relationship, of intimacy, of compassion, of humility, of connection, without being transformed into kind of these people who kind of are so connected and overwhelmed by what technology is, where technology becomes the identity of certain people. And I feel that tension is starting with a lot of people because the phone is starting to become like kind of, in a sense, their identity and what they see and what they watch, right? And so, I mean, it's a big ethical thing, but yeah, it's definitely one of the things, I'm concerned about or thinking about.
And I almost feel guilty of this myself. It's like I feel like I live more of my life in the virtual world and get more joy and emotion out of the virtual world, human connections, but coming through my computers than normal human connections. And I don't know, I think that's honestly really sad in some ways. And I feel like there's a void in humanity of like, we don't really have community anymore.
Yeah.
Like everyone's just their own bubble connected to the internet. That's our community. And I think that's a really sad thing. And like, people are really just, like they think they are their Instagram profile. They
Yeah.
don't like that's how tight it is. So I only see this getting way worse with technology. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we can talk about more about this in a bit. But let's go back to these like three issues I see. So the first issue is this idea of who has controlling interest of this new holding company. So it's important, I think, to think about, because with SpaceX, it's extremely important that SpaceX retains a long-term vision and priority and focus, where the mission is to, set up a civilization on Mars, and it's not necessarily a for-profit, right, priority. And I think in a lot of ways, the vision can be compromised. For example, if Elon in this new holding company only holds 30% of the voting power or less, and you have all these big institutions hold, more than that, you have just pull together the top 5 or 10 institutions. They might be able to, in a way, outvote Elon. And if you take just the kind of the rational, the Wall Street mind, they might be like, hey, X this, program and forget this. That's 20 years out. Who cares about it? It's just wasting money. Like put your money into what can, return cash right now or next year. It's so short-term focused in a lot of ways. And so I think my proposal would be that the holding company only comes together if Elon retains over half or the majority of voting power in this new company. So you would have to make it where there would be some type of preferred shares or class of shares where Elon would kind of have his shares. So it would be a huge shareholder vote for Tesla, but they would have to vote to enter this new holding company, where the new holding company, Elon Musk has kind of super shares, super voting rights. So he holds, let's say, 55% of the voting rights, even though he holds 25% or 30% of the company at large, right? And I think if we're able to do that, Elon might feel more comfortable with the holding company because he could ensure that this holding company has like long-term focus and long-term goals. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's so many great points here, and I think we need King Elon. It has to be a dictatorship for this to work, which sounds kind of backward thinking, but I remember when they voted Elon out as chairman after the funding secured thing, and I was like pounding the table, like, no, like we need someone who doesn't need to listen to the board, who is CEO and chairman, who thinks super long term instead of like 8 cooks in the kitchen, and then we get this muddled bureaucratic strategy with no long term thinking. Like, I'm always when I invest in companies, I want to see a dictatorship because I just think that's how things get done. But then part of me is like, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, but at the end of the day, yeah, I think the only way this works is we need to give Elon control. That's kind of what I was going to ask you is like, how logistically does this work? I think you're onto something big here with the shareholder vote of we all basically secede our voting power to Elon. And that's got to be the start of it, I guess. But I'm curious if you have actually like, how would this actually happen?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's pretty straightforward. It's you create so it might have to start with like a shareholder proposal. Maybe I might create one. Maybe I'll contact like some influencers on YouTube and Twitter. Maybe we'll put together some type of package. But the idea would be the proposal would be, hey, here's a holding company, and the holding company would have X amount of normal shares. And so every Tesla shareholder would get one share of this holding company, right? And then Boring Company and Neuralink and SpaceX shareholders would get equivalent amount, let's say, of shares for this holding company. But then in this new holding company, there would be an additional voting, additional class, right, of super voting shares. And Elon would transfer some of his shares actually to those kind of new shares or something, or maybe all of his shares would go there. But basically, Elon Musk would have 55% voting power in this new holding company structure. And then the shareholder vote. The thing is, it only needs to go through one shareholder vote because SpaceX, Neuralink, and Boring Company are private, and Elon basically runs those companies. So if Elon says yes, those three companies are done. So now it just needs Tesla shareholder approval. And so we need a proposal where go ahead.
Well, one thing I'm thinking is like Neuralink, SpaceX, all these shareholders are going to want huge upside. So if you're cashing in right now at the current valuation, Tesla's 80% of the value, SpaceX is 100 bill, Neuralink's $1 billion, Boring Company's $5 billion. Like they're going to get a super small percentage, and then their upside gets washed out because they're part of this umbrella. I don't know. That's to me, I think the biggest struggle, which I think it's possible because the Elon community is we have to overcome that you're not just in it for the money. We have to decide that we want our companies to build a future that we want. And that is the goal, not how to make the most money. And then I think this can totally flow.
Well, actually,
but I think that's just...
Yeah, actually, I don't think we need to be concerned about the investors in Boring Company, Neuralink, and SpaceX. Mostly because, for example, with Neuralink and Boring Company, my guess is Elon owns probably a good 70-80% of it. Meaning,
I think so.
Shareholders own nothing. They have zero say. Elon just makes a decision. It's over. Like literally, when you own 70 or 80% of the company, it doesn't matter. You don't even have to vote on anything. You just say do it, right? So in that sense, I think with those companies, Tesla would have, or the holding company would give a generous valuation. So let's say hypothetically, Neuralink is valued at $1 billion. The holding company would say, okay, we're going to value Neuralink at $3 billion, right? And Boring Company, let's say is valued at $1 billion, we'll also value at $3 billion. So you're getting like a double or triple instantly, right, for the shareholders. And the main people though is that Tesla shareholders have to be okay with those type of valuations, right? Paying double or triple for Neuralink or Boring Company. And the one of the key things is SpaceX. And this is the second issue I want to discuss with you is the valuation that SpaceX has going into this holding company matters a lot in terms of how much equity Elon's going to take in this new holding company. For example, if SpaceX is valued at $55 billion and Elon owns, let's say, 50 to 60%, 55 or 60% of SpaceX, hypothetically, then his share is going to be diluted like crazy, meaning he's just going to, he's not going to gain a lot of the holding company's ownership, right? But on the flip side, if you think, if you wait 5 years and let's say SpaceX is worth $200 billion, right? Or even more hypothetically, and let's say it's closer, somewhat in a closer range than Tesla, then Elon would gain more kind of ownership or equity in that new holding company, right? And so that's kind of the dilemma is SpaceX is valued so low right now compared to Tesla. So there's not a lot of upside for Elon in terms of the new equity that he's going to get in this holding company. So we have to somehow compensate Elon for this. So for SpaceX, we need to give a generous valuation as they enter into the holding company. So we need to value it at maybe 100 or 150 billion dollars. And then the kicker though is we need to give those super voting rights to Elon, right? I think he cares about that more than he cares about the equity. He's willing to like fudge on the equity a bit, but with the voting rights, I think that's going to be probably the stickler.
Yeah, and you make an interesting point that like the Tesla shareholders are going to have to approve this while the other ones aren't. But Elon's the majority shareholder of all the three other companies, so he has to retain control of X, conglomerate, because otherwise he's giving up the dictatorship of Boring, Neuralink, and SpaceX, which he already has on lock right now.
Exactly.
So you don't want to give those three up just to get back total control of Tesla. So I think that's interesting. The other big thing I've been pitching SpaceX is like, dude, let's float our shares. Why are we only letting VC douchebags buy our stock instead of the hundreds of billions of capital of retail shareholders that are desperate to buy? You need to figure out a way to not IPO and partner with a company like Carta, use their exchange Carta X, float their shares, get a 300 bill valuation. The second you open it up, bam, then you market to market essentially. That's what Tesla needs to do. SpaceX isn't marked to market at 55 billion. That's why this whole plan is going to fall apart. You're letting Tesla get marked to market. SpaceX is at 200 billion if they float it today.
Yeah,
2 years
exactly.
from now, it's 400 billion. So then that'll even out everything and fix this problem, in my opinion. So there's a lot of ways. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm curious
no.
if you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, like I've been telling people, I think SpaceX is probably one of the biggest no-brainer investments today, partly because like the equity market has taken off, but on the flip side, you have Starlink, which is completely blowing it out of the water. I mean, if you would have told people that Starlink would be launching, 1,000 satellites, having beta service already in 2020, if you would have told people 5 years ago that this is what's going to happen, like very few people would have believed you, And Elon, like he's adamant. He's been saying all this time, like, hey, half of the internet, the backbone traffic of the internet is going to go through Starlink. And I don't think people understand like the magnitude of what Elon's talking about here. This is going to be huge. I mean, Starlink, when you work out the numbers, it could be worth $1 trillion in 10 or 15 years, I think. And the whole point of Starlink was to fund Mars. The whole point was to fund SpaceX. Like that was supposed to be the cash cow, right, for SpaceX. And I think if there's no holding company, that's going to happen, right? Starlink will become the cash cow. But if there's a holding company, now you've got like access to unlimited capital, right, at a tiny dilution. I mean, I can't imagine like what Elon could do if he could just raise, I mean, he's already raised like $20 billion for Tesla. He could do anything. But like if he could do anything in a holding company with SpaceX and all of his other ventures, like, yeah, I think it's gonna be insane.
Yeah, I think not to get too much on SpaceX, but like that was I 6 months ago, I invested in SpaceX, like my biggest investment ever, more than I put into Tesla. And it's because of this Starlink value. I think this is a major catalyst. The launch business has been proven. I think that kind of justifies the valuation of 35 or whatever billion I was in. And then on like a free option of Starlink, Like they haven't
Mm.
even spun this out. Like the second this becomes a new entity and they're like it's a thing, it's a $20 billion company. That's why I love the idea of using it as the ATM for Mars, selling 10% at 20 bill, raise 2 bill, doubles to 50 bill, sell another, you could just slowly dilute it and use it as the ATM and then keep core ownership. Elon doesn't have to dilute a single share of core SpaceX stock ever again. So I thought that was, I think, and that's kind of what it seems like their roadmap is. I think that's a genius idea uh, to make it all work. But then it's like deep down, I'm like, that just feels like more complication of Elon's empire, right? Like we're spinning out Starlink into a separate company, even though it's really, a SpaceX product, and we want to put Starlink satellites into every Tesla or at the superchargers. Like, it feels like a complication.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like, yes, IPOing Starlink makes sense, but then like you've got another company now, right? This is like a fifth company. And then it's just, I feel like, I mean, I can't necessarily go inside Elon Musk's brain, but my feeling and sense is at a certain point, you just want kind of simplicity. You're like, you get a bit tired of like having to open up your emails and get a million emails from all these different companies you run, right? And it's like, it's so hard to keep track of everything. And like, can you imagine like you're looking at the financials, right, of one company and next company and this company and this company, and you have to discuss them with your CFO for everything, and even just like SpaceX having to raise money like every 6 or 12 months or something. What a hassle, like people have to the IR of SpaceX has to go to Elon, ask like what money, what valuation should we do it at, and Elon has to get involved, and it's just such complication. I feel like at a certain point, Elon's like, "Hey, man, I'm dying for more simplicity. Just make it easier, and if it's easier, then I can do more stuff. I can maybe create some extra stuff. I think that's yeah, possible. So, hey, I want to talk about this last kind of hurdle or challenge, and that is SpaceX as a national kind of security level company. They have different requirements from the government because they're, a critical part of the government's, I guess, ability to run their space program. Also, connections with military. I think this complicates things a little bit because if SpaceX is so deeply, let's say, doing business with U.S. military, it could be seen as this holding company now is like a U.S. thing because there's such close connection. I mean, that's one possibility. The second thing is with SpaceX, like SpaceX needs like special clearance for every employee because it's like a national security thing, and there's probably going to be some restrictions or requirements for SpaceX to be somewhat independent. So they're going to have, their own hiring process, their own teams, their whole management, et cetera. But I still think it could work out where you, like, for example, take Warren Buffett's, Berkshire Hathaway. It's a holding company, but these companies run independently. They have their own management and everything. It just makes the running of the company somewhat simpler because you don't have the same filing requirements as a separate company, and you could raise money quicker and easier. It just kind of reduces the pressure of things, right? So I'm thinking for SpaceX, they would still have to maintain kind of this high level of, meeting these national security requirements as an independent company, hiring process, but it still would lower the complexity where you could offload some of the other kind of non-important issues, let's say finances or different parts of management or et cetera. And so kind of what are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, and I guess now it's actually really clicking of the structure this would work. Essentially, we have a vote, and everyone at that pro rata amount we were talking about earlier decides to convert their equity from all these companies into the new company.
Mm-hmm.
And that's So, wait, what was your question again?
So SpaceX, how do you integrate SpaceX as this national security level type of company that requires a different type of treatment for all their employees, and they have security protocols, et cetera? Like, is it going to work inside a holding company, you think?
Yeah. So now I got it. So it's like, so you combine all this equity, right? But then it's like you still have to, even though we all traded in our equity and it feels like we're all combining into X, all the companies are still operating as their own independent subsidiaries. And then I think you could have it like Berkshire, where maybe there's a way we can move capital in between those subsidiaries super easily, but SpaceX is still SpaceX and it's a different subsidiary. But now there's not a conflict of interest when we want to partner with someone because they're both wholly owned subsidiaries of X.com. And so I think that's very doable. I mean, I think this is like, and we keep saying like, okay, well, Tesla shareholders would have to be okay with Boring Company, Neuralink going up, SpaceX going up. I think they're all okay with that. It's
Yeah.
really, really easy for like everybody wants this to happen. It's just like, can the lawyers and the legal teams figure this out? Because like you said, I don't know, like the national security thing, that's like so over my head. It's like, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, totally. Like, um, Boring Company Neuralink. Like, you ask Tesla shareholders, "Oh, yeah, would you want to pay a premium, right, to acquire hypothetically, let's say, Boring Company Neuralink?" That's a no-brainer. Of course, you do it. You know, it's like you pay if it's worth $1 billion or $2 billion, you gladly pay a 2 or 3x. You know, for those companies, just because you understand. And plus, it's such a small dilution for Tesla shareholders because what is $2 or $3 billion compared to $600 billion. It's not even 1%. You're paying 0.5%, right, for Neuralink. Do you want to pay 0.5% of your company, of Tesla, for Neuralink? It's like, who's gonna reject that? That's crazy.
yeah, I think the Elon fans are like totally on board. Like I think this is like a no-brainer for them. I'm trying to think of like what would be the holdups of yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I think. I mean, to me, so here's one other angle, is it makes sense, and this is a little bit deeper and a little bit more like on the tiny bit philosophical side, but the idea is Elon understands the importance of having mission and having a clear mission, and he every one of his companies, it's super clear, and I think up until this point, a holding company didn't perhaps make sense because, like, what's the overall arching mission that will hold all of these kind of companies together, but yet allow each company to maintain their own individual missions? Let's say, like with Tesla accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, like how can Tesla join a holding company yet keep strong with their mission and not dilute their mission, right, in the bigger picture? And I think part of that is you need a mission of the holding company that is even bigger and clearer and more exciting than even the mission of each company. Right? That's the only way it's going to work. And so as I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Elon Musk, the reason why he does not just Tesla and SpaceX and Boring Company and Neuralink, and he wants to do other stuff, is Elon is not just about sustainable energy. Elon is not just about, robo taxis, or not just about ending traffic or whatever. That's not what Elon's really about. Like, he's about that inside that company, right? And he'll focus. But what Elon's really about is he's about this bigger idea of making sure humanity survives and humanity progresses forward. Like, that's what Elon, I think, in my opinion, is all about. And that's why you make the holding company that. That's the mission of the holding company. That's Elon's mission. So you make Elon's mission the mission of the holding company. And that's why all of the sub companies can stay who they are. And they're still as strong as what they used to be because they feed off of the bigger Elon mission, right? And that's kind of like the whole idea of why I think it could work, is because the missions can actually have synergy together, right? With the holding company and each
I
separate
love
company.
this part. And I think this is why Elon was on board with your
Yeah.
idea. And what can you dive into that mission? Because it's very, I want to get this, it's like to advance humanity and progress. Or
Yeah.
so what did you come up with as that mission?
So if you kind of look at the core of what concerns Elon, like think about like what Elon finds as useful for his time. And he's super picky with his time. But the thing that concerns him at his deepest core and at his heart is, I think, two things. One is he has concerns about the survival of humanity. He sees like, whoa, man, this is like we're into some risky places. I mean, think about Tesla and and SpaceX. Like, what drives people so much for Tesla and for SpaceX is because they understand, our world is at risk, right? And we need to switch to sustainable energy. We need to have to be a spacefaring civilization. All of these are mandatory in that sense. But this other thing that Elon is adamant about and motivates him at the core is a connected issue. And that is, what if humanity just doesn't progress anymore? Like, what if it stalls out? Like, what if innovation just slows down? And he's seen this in the past, where some civilizations just stall out and just goes downhill from there. But if you look at some of the stuff that's taken over, let's say social media, or let's say media, news media, like what has it all become? It's become a whole thing of game dynamics, of trying to game attention, right? Anything that gets more attention, you just, have hundreds of engineers and all these algorithms and all this technology there to try to just pull out, get people more addicted to something. And if you think about that, is that really innovative? Like, what's going to happen like 100 years down the road if all of the world's engineers are working on monetizing attention, right?
And there's no mission behind it.
Exactly.
It's just to create shareholder value. Like, there's this amazing comic that's like this guy in a suit around a little campfire, and it's like a New Yorker comic, and he's like, well, we destroyed the world, but we created a lot of shareholder value while doing it. And I love that, because that's the disconnect that every single other company in the world has that Elon doesn't. We started this company to solve a problem, not to just make money. And that, to me, is the biggest disconnect that I hate about the corporate world. I hate about business. And it's so short term, and it's like we've lost touch with the fact that we're humans and we live on a planet and we need to take care of it, and we're all in this together, and like everyone's just looking at a spreadsheet trying to maximize the numbers on it.
Yeah.
And that is what makes Elon different from every other CEO. And to me, that is the movement of why this X merger thing could be like one of the biggest catalysts for unlocking value in humanity. Is we need to rethink totally from the ground up, why are we an entity? Are we making shareholder profit? No, every single company should start with a mission first before profit, and should have stakeholders that are everyone in the world, not just themselves and their shareholders. And it's just a totally different mindset about advancing humanity for the right reasons. Like, how many friends do you have, or at least I'm in the age of like late 20s, all my friends are analysts or whatever, like they're all working for companies where they don't give a shit about the mission, they don't care about what they do every day. They're so detached from the world and making it better and actually having purpose in their life, that I think that is a huge, like, people are always like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm, the whole world, everyone's depressed in the whole world, everyone's sad, everyone doesn't know what to do. It's because there's no mission. There's no why to get up in the morning. And that's what Elon always says. Like, you want to, what makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning? That the future is going to be better. And that's why he's working his ass off. Yeah. And so I think the whole world is just missing that. And so that's what gets me so excited about your idea and this stuff. It's like, dude, like, yes, like, how rattled our governments and all these Wall Street people are going to be when $1 trillion of shareholder value across Elon's 4 companies says, we don't even want to make money, we just want to build the future that we all want to be a part of. That's going to be a huge moment for humanity. And I think it's like ready to happen. And I feel so much bubbling like angst of like, like I can just feel it. And so I love that. That to me is why this idea is so beautiful. It's because it really like is going to punch corporate America in the face when they need it the most, and be like, dude, we need to do shit that helps the world, not just make money. And as much as that's kind of simple, it just makes me so like, I love this.
Yeah. Like, if you think about, like, take the big tech companies out there, it's like, what is their mission? Like, what are they trying to do, right? Like, look at Facebook, right? Like, what's their mission? Why do they exist? Or Google, right? Even amongst like the companies out there, maybe you say Apple, maybe Apple has like a clear mission, but then what is Apple's real mission? And from the management, you say, oh, they're trying to make products that people love, right? That help people, etc. But even that, I mean, fine, it's an okay mission, right? But it's somewhat disconnected to this urgency of humanity and the bigger history of the moment we are in history. And that's where Elon comes, and he has that edge where it's not like, I want to make great products, right? It seems kind of out of touch if Elon was to say, our mission is to make great products for people, right? It's like, what are you talking about, right? Elon is like, hey, we're in the midst of major humanity level problems, right? And we need huge solutions to solve them, right? Think about Neuralink. This is a huge solution to a huge mega problem that's it's humanity history level. And his mission statement encapsulates that urgency. Whereas look at Facebook, look at Amazon, look at Google, look at whatever, tech company out there, look at Netflix. What is Netflix's mission? It's like, what, to make great content for what? For people, like, it's just, I mean, yeah, it's just a different level, that we're talking about. And I think in that sense, what you're talking about also is the mission of this holding company and all of its sub companies will be so like tight and so focused on humanity, survival and progress that it just puts to shame every other large, company out there. It's just going to be, I think, this dichotomy of all these other companies are trying to preserve their shareholder value, their, get their profits, et cetera, like doing the typical thing of a company. But then you have this other company out here that's trying to push the envelope on humanity and save, the world. It's like insane.
And I think we get more productivity out of humans and more happiness. Like, talk to people who worked at Tesla. They worked so hard. And even if they had to work so hard and lost their whole life, it's almost like a religious experience when they talk about it, because they're like, I actually did something that mattered in the world. And like, I learned more than I ever had before. And like, I was a part of something that actually changed the world. Like, it's really inspiring to hear how I think Elon's this entire mission, like, it's the why, right? And that flows down to the culture of the companies, and I think enables them to innovate faster, enables this culture of collaboration when we're really in it to solve a problem. And so that's just something I've noticed from talking to Elon's employees. Like, this is not just like Elon Musk doing it. This is a thread of culture in all of his companies that extends throughout the whole organization.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, on one other note is I think this holding company, it could take a while. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues at hand. I mean, Tesla is not a small company anymore. You've got, all these institutions, right, that hold a piece of this company. And so everyone has to have a say in some ways. There's a lot of formality and process before I think a holding company comes to realization. But probably the biggest hurdle is Elon. If he sees this idea as something that is essential to speeding up kind of the efforts to preserve humanity's survival and to push progress forward. If he sees it as an enabler to speed up things, I think he's for it, right? But if he sees it as something that is going to slow down things, then obviously he's going to, reject it. But it seems like at first glance, it seems like, there's somewhat of a positive openness from Elon, and that's probably, the biggest hurdle right now.
Yeah, I think Elon's on board. It's just about, can he do it? And then how much of the stock does Elon own? 20% of Tesla, 30% of Tesla? You don't think we can rally up another 20% of the retail shareholder base and get a couple institutions to knock us over to 50 or 60 or whatever we need to get this to pass? Like, I think this is in the bag if they want it to happen. It's just thinking through the long-term dynamics and structure is really important. And like, can SpaceX really move faster as a part of this conglomerate? Can Neuralink really stay laser focused as part of it? Those are really the things to think through. But other than that, to me, it's like the shareholders are ready for this to happen. Like, I see, and I don't think like Tesla separate, Tesla public, SpaceX private, but running all these funding rounds in this weird pseudo public private thing with people buying LLCs to buy LLCs to buy LLCs to buy into the company, Neuralink private, boring company private. This is not the end game for Elon Musk. This is not how they should be structured or the most efficient way. It's just a scattershot of just him doing the easiest thing for each company at the time it was created, because they just needed money and wanted to do the shit they planned on doing. And so I think, I'm constantly thinking about, like, how does SpaceX get all the people in? How do we all invest in Neuralink because we want to invest? Foreign company. And so to me, this is really the only solution where I feel like we could have this thing be public. You could let everyone buy in. Elon would still control it as the dictator, kind of, or like be the guy running it, so we can still focus super long term. Like, it kind of checks all of these boxes in a way. So I don't know. I'm a huge fan of this because deep down, I'm like, dude, this can't last. This fragmented system can't last. It needs the X thing, and yeah.
Yeah. So I want to shoot out, what are some crazy ideas or things that you think Elon might be able to do under this holding company that previously maybe he might be reserved to do? Like, for example, I was thinking he could start some type of biotech venture. He's said this on several occasions. He thinks biotech is a huge industry, genomics, et cetera. If you stick, one of the frustrations I have with genomics and the whole CRISPR field is, like, earlier in the year, I went through every single kind of major, CRISPR company. I read through all their filings. Watched all the interviews from the CEOs, et cetera. And I couldn't find that outlier company, the CEO who just like really had it all together. Like, they all seemed like kind of, I don't know, they weren't as impressive as what I would hope for in a company. And I feel like in some ways, what Elon can bring to that whole field is he brings this like analyzing things from a first principle view, and he pushes people to go faster than what they think is even possible, you know? And he knows how to structure things and give people goals for that. And I think like with genomics, I'm also very curious what Elon could do with education. If you think about it, education has yet to be disrupted on a huge, massive scale. You know, I mean, I think we're just in the early first inning right now with how education can be disrupted. But if you imagine what Elon could do if under this holding company there was an education kind of, you know, tech company, yeah, I don't know. I don't fully understand all of the things he could do per se, but I think there's a lot of fields I think that Elon looks at and says, I think we need to disrupt that field. You know, I think there's a lot of like inefficiencies and they're just not doing it right. They're just not making products people love in that field, right? And yeah, I think it's endless in a sense of what Elon could do. What are some ideas that you might have that you think Elon could do?
Yeah, I mean, even more than that, like Neuralink, what I think was the breakthrough is he created an incentive structure to bring together the smartest scientists from all of these fields, and then the pace of innovation of brain-machine interfaces is going through the roof because of this incentive structure he created, which in some ways was the genius of it being a VC-backed company, everyone getting equity. So I think there's a huge problem I see of like governments doing nothing to innovate, even though they have a ton of money. Like big companies get too big and they stop innovating. Like it feels like we have all this amazing technology and potential, but then we're like not figuring out a way to get the resources and the smart people and the pace of innovation to focus on it. And so that's what I'm curious if X.com, this whole X conglomerate could do is like, okay, well now can Elon just start writing, $1 million grants to all his favorite scientists and see what comes up and like doing all these hackathons and kind of bubbling up the smaller innovations. I think there's huge potential for that. Like, I mean, education, I think he like homeschooled some of his kids. So that's probably already something that's top of mind. Like, I don't know, even when you hear Elon talk about his VTOL jet idea, it's like, well, is it SpaceX? Is it Tesla? Like, that's already kind of stressing him out. It sounds like it's like, well, if it was just the holding company, that's better. Genomics, I personally think Elon is, like, you can't dilute focus too much. And I think he's got so much on his plate with like Tesla. Like, I think SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and Boring Company are all in any one of their grand plan. So to me, just before we worry about the next 10 startups he's going to do, let's get all of that capital that Tesla has and that cost of capital to flow through to SpaceX, Neuralink, Boring Company. That's thing number one to solve. Thing number two is now, like what you said, no HR department, no CFO. We don't need to replicate. We want to start doing genomics projects. Neuralink already has a lab. We can rent some extra space, pop it out. Like, I think it'll be just having this entity that is so focused on progress with no bureaucratic BS is going to be a major unlock to just all sorts of technologies. But I don't know. I wish I had a better answer of like what kind of crazy stuff Elon would do.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's yeah. I mean, I feel like this holding company idea, it'll probably take on a life of its own in some ways as people talk about it. I mean, it's kind of cool. You get the idea out. Elon says, "Hey, good idea," but now you have lots of conversations. You have thousands and millions or hundreds of thousands of people just talking about it on their own or thinking about it. I think over time, all these people are going to input their ideas into the conversation, and it's going to kind of take its own shape. And so it's going to be fascinating to, I think, see what will happen in the future. I wanted to thank you, Gali, for chatting and just working out some of these issues with me, just chatting. It's lots of fun.
Yeah, so fun. Thanks for including me. I'm huge props to you putting out your idea and getting Elon to reply. I think there's something about the way you package that idea that really resonated with him and a ton of us in the community that I think is awesome and like really solves this pain point of like, we all want to help Elon and just make him work faster and just keep innovating, keep pushing humanity forward. Like whatever we can do to just push that forward, we're all on board for. And I feel like you're channeling a lot of that with this idea. And I just think it's on to something huge. Like this multi-trillion-dollar entity that's making energy sustainable, taking us to space, making us cyborgs, doing it for the right reasons to advance us all, not for profit, is like what humanity's been missing. And so I'm so pumped, and huge props to you for just like making this all happen.
Yeah, no. Actually, I take no credit because I take only a tiny bit of credit, maybe piecing together the mission, how the overall mission will help the other pieces. I feel like Elon has always wanted kind of a simplicity to his ventures. Like when he talked about the holding company, 4 or 5 years ago, I could sense that desire to maybe have a structure that would allow a lot more that he could do. So yeah, I think he's had it all along. It's definitely not a new idea. So I'm just glad to be part of the conversation with you and other people in the community. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, thanks. I can't wait to read the comments. You're gonna be epic.
Oh yeah, if you have a comment, if you're watching this and you want to chime in, just add a comment in the comment section. It's gonna be fun. Join us on Twitter, and I'll leave Gali's Twitter handle as well as mine in the video description. All right, we'll see you guys later, and signing out. Bye.